Your Copilot isn't dumb. You starved it. No schema, no rules, no guardrails. Then you complain about hallucinations. The truth? Most Power Platform AI failures aren't model IQ. They're context that you created. Here's what you'll get today. A repeatable context engineering pattern for Copilot Studio and Power Automate that kills hallucinations, fixes cross-tenant drift, and slashes latency and cost. We'll build the system message pattern, a schema grounding checklist, and a retrieval pipeline template. There's one layer everyone forgets, the policy layer that prevents governance drift. We'll wire it in and prove it with before and after metrics. Now we start. Problem: why your Copilot fails. Context debt. Let's define the problem precisely. Context debt. It's the accumulation of missing or sloppy context that forces a language model to guess. You skip system rules, you don't ground to Dataverse, you leave tools undefined, and you ignore policies. Then you're shocked when outputs wobble across tenants. Fascinating. Context debt shows up as 4 failures. First, missing system rules. No identity, no scope, no refusal policy. The model optimizes for being helpful and verbose, not compliant and precise. Second, ungrounded data. You wave at the loan table without giving entity names, field definitions, relationships, or sample records. Third, undefined tools. You ask it to update status, but you don't expose a governed action path in Power Automate. Fourth, absent policies. You rely on vibes instead of DLP, sensitivity labels, and conditional access. That quartet guarantees drift. The evidence is everywhere. High failure and abandonment rates in enterprise AI track to execution and context, not model limits. Teams report hallucinations, environment-specific inconsistencies, and token burn from overfetching whole tables just to be safe. You don't need a bigger model. You need a spine. Here's the mental model that fixes it. 4 layers of context: system, retrieval, tools, policies. Think of it like the Windows registry for your agent. It's not just a database, it's the spine. System declares who the agent is and what it refuses. Retrieval provides facts and schema so it stops inventing fields. Tools expose the exact actions it's allowed to perform under least privilege. Policies enforce boundaries regardless of clever prompts. Remove any layer and the outputs wobble. Add all 4 and they lock in. The thing most devs miss: environments are the security boundary in Power Platform. If your DLP policy blocks business to non-business connector mixing in prod but not in dev, you've built 2 different universes. Your agent's eyes and hands change by environment. So yes, results drift across tenants and environments because you changed the world under its feet. Let me spell out the typical failure loop. You build a Copilot Studio agent, you give it a vague goal, help with loan applications. You link a document library of PDFs without extracting structure. You don't index Dataverse entities, relationships, or sensitivity labels. You skip the tool catalog and assume Copilot will figure it out. Then you ask a question. It replies with generic policy fluff and invents a field named loan stage that doesn't exist in your schema. Congratulations, you paid for tokens to read the wrong content and got nonsense back. Compare that to a grounded approach. Same question, but your retrieval layer includes a schema index, entity loan application, field status, pick list values, relationships to applicant and document, plus sample records. The agent references loan application, status explicitly, and cites allowed values. No guessing. The difference isn't model, it's context. Latency and cost are symptoms of the same debt. Overfetching entire tables because you lack field-level filters explodes tokens and time. Vague retrieval forces the model to wade through irrelevant chunks. Undefined top and no intent filtering. You pay for everything, learn nothing, and still hallucinate. Brutal. Governance drift is the quiet killer. Without a policy layer, DLP, sensitivity labels, conditional access, your agent's behavior gradually diverges. A connector gets reclassified, a guest account sneaks into a flow, logs are off, then the agent happily summarizes sensitive notes to a non-business connector. You don't notice until audit week. Excellent. Here's the fix, and we'll build it step by step in this series. System layer, a terse, versioned system message that encodes identity, scope, refusal, schema awareness, tool use rules, and logging boundaries. Authored per environment with tokens for business unit and sensitivity mapping. Retrieval layer, a pipeline that grounds to Dataverse first, with a document index as a secondary source using entity-aware chunking, hybrid search, security trimming, and field-level filters. Tools layer, a curated catalog of Power Automate actions under least privilege, with prompt templates that define input schemas, refusal logic, and sensitivity flags. Policy layer, enforced DLP groups, conditional access, real-time masking via labels, and an admin kill switch. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Models predict text. You engineer truth, power, and boundaries. Your job is the context. The model is the rendering engine. Stop blaming the renderer for your missing blueprint. Layer 1, system context that doesn't drift, pattern plus checklist. Now we stop the guessing and install identity. Without explicit identity, scope, and refusal rules, large language models default to being charming Labradors, fetching everything, pleasing everyone, and trampling compliance. You need a bouncer, not a golden retriever. The truth, if your system message is vague, your outputs will be vague. If your system message is inconsistent per environment, your outputs will drift per environment. So we author the spine first. Here's the pattern I use. It's short, versioned, and ruthless. Role, you are the lone operations copilot for business unit. In environment name. You answer only about loan applications and related processes. Scope, stick to Dataverse entities and labeled documents in this environment. If the answer requires external systems or unlabeled content, refuse and propose a safe next step. Tone, concise, factual, cite fields exactly as schema, entity, dot, field. Refusal policy, if sensitive content labeled emip label list is requested in a non-business context, refuse with reason and log refusal summary. Schema awareness, prefer the Dataverse schema index, never invent fields, map synonyms to canonical names using the provided glossary. Tool use rules. You may call approved Power Automate actions only when an intent is classified as actionable with confidence. Yell 8. Otherwise, respond with analysis. Logging boundaries. Do not echo PII, summarize values as masked when sensitivity is high. That pattern goes into Copilot Studio custom instructions, and yes, it gets parameterized environment name, business unit, MIP label list. Tie those to environment variables so dev, UAT, and prod share the same logic with different bindings. Version it sys MSG v1.3. Stamp the version in every response footer during testing and policy v1.3 so drift is visible immediately. Now the checklist, because you'll forget something otherwise. Objectives. What the agent is allowed to achieve in one sentence. Audience, who it serves. Loan officers, not the entire company. Definitions. Canonical entity and field names plus synonyms. Allowed content. Permitted data classes and sources. Disallowed actions, anything cross-tenant, unlabeled, or outside business connectors. Escalation path, when to hand off to a human. Criteria and message template. Evaluation rubric, how we grade outputs. Field accuracy, refusal correctness, and citation of schema. Author this in plain language, then compress. The most common mistake is burying constraints under a novel of policy text. The model will skim like an average intern. Keep it surgical. Another classic error, stuffing constraints into the user prompt. No, constraints belong in the system message and tool wrappers, not wherever the user happens to type. And version per environment, dev can be permissive, prod cannot. Copying a single system file across tenants without tokens is how you create parallel universes. Quick win you can do today. Templatize the message with variables and bind add solution import. That alone knocks out a pile of inconsistency. Add a glossary section mapping common synonyms to canonical fields, stage, step, phase, loan application. Status, you'll see hallucinated fields vanish. Implementation in Copilot Studio is straightforward. Open custom instructions, paste the pattern, insert variables for environment name, business unit, and emip label list and toggle always include. Create an instruction set node for schema canonicalization that the agent references before answering. Then add a refusal template paragraph. I can't share, redacted, due to policy label. Here's a safe alternative. Consistency isn't magic, it's templates. Final guardrail, logging boundaries. Mark that the agent never repeats raw sensitive values. When it must reference them, it uses placeholders and offers a tool action that handles secrets via credential actions in flows. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Identity, scope, refusal, schema, tools, logging, 6 lines, 0 drama. Layer 2, retrieval that grounds to Dataverse or pipeline template. Identity is set. Now we give it facts it can't hallucinate. Retrieval is where most of you turn the fire hose on and call it grounding. Incorrect. Retrieval is selective, it's entity aware, and yes, it's Dataverse first because that's where your truth lives. Why this matters? Hallucinations bloom when the model has to infer structure. If it can't see canonical entity and field definitions, it invents them. Latency and cost spike when you shovel entire tables and PDF blobs because you didn't filter by intent. The result? Expensive noise. The fix is a pipeline that privileges schema and trims by security. Here's the template. 2 indexes, 1 brain. First, a schema index for Dataverse, entities, fields, relationships, option sets, business rules, plus a small glossary of synonyms. Second, a document index for policies, SOPs, and reference docs only after they're structured. Hybrid search over both with security trimming by environment and user. The model never sees what the user isn't allowed to see. That's not a suggestion, it's the boundary. Let me break the schema index down. Capture for each entity, name, description, field list with data types, option set values, relationships, one-to-many, many-to-one, and business rules that affect valid states. Include 2 sample records per entity, redacted, and one example query that maps natural language to canonical fields. Add a synonyms map, stage, step, phase, loan application status. The model will anchor to canonical names because you handed it the map. Now the document index. PDFs aren't sacred texts, they're containers. Extract structure before indexing, headings become sections, tables become key value pairs. Policies get tagged with Microsoft Purview classifications and MIP labels, so sensitivity is machine readable. If a file can't be passed into sections and fields, it doesn't belong in the index. You are not building a scrapbook, security trimming is non-negotiable. The index query layer must filter by user identity, environment, and DLP policy. If dev allows certain connectors and prod doesn't, the retrieval layer reflects that. Same user, different environment, different retrieval. That's not drift, that's design. Chunking stops slicing by page count. Chunk by entity logic. For schema, group at entity and relationship granularity, think 500, 800 tokens per chunk with field lists intact. For documents, chunk by section with headings preserved and include breadcrumb metadata. Title, section, subsection. The point is to return meaning, not confetti. Performance tactics you'll actually feel. Field level filtering. When intent includes status, don't pull the entire entity definition. Pull the field block and the relevant business rule. Top K by intent, classification routes the query. Schema queries get small k, 2, 3. Document lookups might need 4, 6. Cache high-frequency FAQs and schema snippets in memory with a short TTL so you're not paying for the same lookups all day. Enforce connector and token limits so a single vague prompt can't trigger a table sweep. You're welcome. How to wire this in Copilot Studio. Set Dataverse as the primary knowledge source. Build a custom data source that emits schema cards, entity, fields, relationships, option sets, rules, examples. Attach purview classifications and MIP labels as properties. Add your document index as a secondary source with section content. Configure hybrid retrieval with re-ranking that prefers schema matches over narrative text. If a schema hit exists, boost it. If none exists, fall back to documents. If neither exists, refuse or ask a clarifying question. Yes, refusal is better than fiction. Schema grounding checklist you will print and tape to your monitor. Entity names exactly as in Dataverse. Field descriptions in plain language. Relationships listed with cardinality, option set values and meanings. Sample records with masked values, business rules, null handling notes, synonyms to canonical names, and data quality caveats. If any of those are missing, your grounding is incomplete. Common pitfalls. Indexing PDFs without extracting structure, don't. Ignoring sensitivity labels, dangerous. Mixing business and non-business connectors in the same retrieval call. Blocked by DLP and prod, then you act surprised. Another. Returning 10 near duplicate chunks because you never deduplicated headers. Clean your feed. Let's do a quick mental demo. Prompt. Can we move this loan to final review? Bad pipeline retrieves 3 generic policy PDFs and no schema. Model invents loan stage. Good pipeline. Intent classifier routes to schema, returns loan application. Status, allowed transitions via business rules and the Power Automate action name that changes status. The answer cites status allowed values and either proposes the action or refuses if sensitivity blocks it. That's grounding. One last detail, latency. Measure retrieval time separately from generation. If retrieval exceeds 300 ms routinely, your filters are wrong or your index is bloated. Optimize there first. Models are fast, your indecision isn't. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Retrieval is not search, it's curation. Dataverse is the spine. Documents are muscle. Attach both, trim by security, and your agent stops guessing. Layer 3. Tooling and policies that enforce governance. Power Automate plus DLP. It knows what's true. Now teach it what it can do safely. An agent that can't act is a chatbot. An agent that acts without guardrails is a breach waiting for headlines. You want competence with a seatbelt. Enter Power Automate, DLP, and conditional access. The muscle, the fences, and the bouncer at the door. Here's the principle. Actions are explicit, permissioned, and reversible. We don't give the model freedom. We give it a catalog of verbs. Each verb is a flow with a narrow input schema, least privilege connection references, and refusal logic baked in. The model never improvises rights. It requests a verb. Start with a tool catalog. Catalog entries look like this. Display name, purpose, input schema, preconditions, sensitivity flags, connection reference, and return contract. Example. Update loan status, purpose, transition loan application. Status, input, loan ID string, target status, enum, preconditions. Target status must be valid transition per rule set. Sensitivity flags requires business connector labeled internal, connection reference, SVC loans min. You're teaching a toddler to use scissors by giving safety scissors, not a chainsaw. Least privilege isn't optional. Create dedicated service accounts with minimum Dataverse permissions to perform just that action. No broad table rights, no owner-level power trips. Store credentials in connection references bound per environment, so dev uses fake data, prod touches reality, and neither leaks into the other. If you're using custom connectors, security review them like you mean it. Now build a flow template with 3 standard layers. Layer 1, input validation. Validate types, map synonyms to canonical fields, and reject ambiguous or missing parameters with a structured refusal. Layer 2, policy checks. Evaluate MIP labels, DLP group membership, and any conditional access signals you expose via headers or triggering context. Layer 3, execution and masking. Perform the minimal write, mask sensitive values in logs, and return a compact result with a correlation ID. Prompt templates sit in front of these flows as wrappers. They define how the agent asks for the tool, when intent, change status, and confidence. 8. Call update loan status with loaned target status. If status conflicts with business rules or sensitivity blocks, refuse and cite the specific policy. This is where most of you fail. You pass free-form text into flows like it's 2019. Strong schema in, strong outcomes out. Mark variables as sensitive. Inputs like SSN, income, or any high sensitivity field live in secure variables. They never echo to run history. Use credential actions for anything authentication related. If a flow needs to fetch a token, credentials are pulled at runtime from a secure store, not pasted in a prompt, not shoved into environment variables named PELS.read. Yes, people do that. Don't be people. Conditional access is the adult in the room. Enforce MFA. Limit execution to compliant devices or trusted locations. If your policy says guests can't kick off actions, your tool wrapper should read caller identity and decline with a clear refusal. Action requires a compliant device per policy. The agent stays polite, the policy stays firm. DLP is the membrane. Classify connectors into business, non-business, and blocked. Flows in this tool catalog use business-only connectors, trying to route output to a non-business destination. Blocked at the tenant level, not just in your flow. The point is to make the wrong path physically impossible. You don't depend on developer restraint, you depend on physics. Environment segmentation keeps your sanity. Dev, UAT, prod, different data, different connection references, same tool names, same schemas. That means your agent's prompts don't change, only the bindings do. You test in UAT with realistic labels and DLP settings, so surprises don't appear in prod. If dev has a lax DLP and prod is strict, test both. Variance is intentional, not accidental. Policy layer wired into runtime. Embed refusal rules that key off MIP labels in retrieved content. If the retrieval returns a record with confidential and the requested action would expose it to an external system, the tool wrapper refuses with a policy-coded reason and logs the incident. Real-time masking replaces values with placeholders in model-visible text. The model never sees raw secrets, so it can't leak them by accident. It's not distrust, it's hygiene. Logging and audits are part of the design, not an afterthought. Turn on audit logs for every flow. Record who requested the action, what parameters were passed, masked, what policy checks ran, and the outcome. Quarterly reviews, find orphaned assets, overshared flows, and connector creep. Deprovision anything owned by a former employee. Ignore this, and you'll eventually discover a ghost flow writing to production at 2 a.m. Delightful. Common mistakes. Passing secrets in user prompts. Instant regret. Logging PII in success messages. Also regret. Building flows without versioning prompts and schemas. Now your agent is calling an API that changed last week. Unmanaged environments with no DLP. Congratulations, your proof of concept is a liability. And my favorite, mixing business and non-business connectors because we just needed to email someone. No, use business email or don't email. Let's talk kill switch. You need an incident switch in the admin center or via automation that disables the agent, disables the tool solution, or both. When a policy breach occurs, you don't debate, you halt, investigate, and only resume with a change log. Speed is security. Once you wire this, something predictable happens. The agent stops overpromising, it proposes actions it can actually take. When policy denies it, the refusal is specific and logged. Users trust it because it's consistent. And yes, your audit team stops hovering like a hawk because you finally gave them telemetry worth reading. End-to-end build. Copilot Studio plus Power Automate. Before, after metrics. Let's stitch the spine together with a concrete build. A loan support Copilot. Copilot Studio handles orchestration, Dataverse is the truth, Power Automate is the hands. Same architecture in dev, UAT, prod, different bindings, same logic. Step 1, apply the system pattern. In Copilot Studio, create custom instructions using our versioned template. Bind environment name. UAT, business unit, retail lending, MIP label list, confidential, highly confidential. Add the glossary stage, step, phase, loan application, status. Turn on always include. Stamp policy v1.3 in the testing footer so drift is visible. Step 2, build the schema index. Generate schema cards for entities, loan application, applicant, document. Include fields, option sets, relationships, and 2 masked sample records per entity. Add business rules. Status transitions allowed, submitted, initial review, final review, approved, rejected, no direct submitted, approved. Published as the primary knowledge source. Add the document index as secondary. SOPs, landing policy sections, purview classifications, MIP labels, headings preserved. Step 3. Configure retrieval. Enable hybrid search with re-ranking that boosts schema matches. Classify intents. Schema lookup, policy lookup, actionable. Top K2 for schema, 4 for docs. Field level filters by intent term, status, income, KYC. Turn on security trimming by user and environment. Cache high-frequency schema snippets with a 10-minute TTL. Step 4. Wire the tool catalog. Import a managed solution with 3 flows: get loan summary, update loan status, request document. Each flow has input schema, preconditions, sensitivity flags, least privilege connection references bound to UAT. Inputs marked sensitive where appropriate, logs enabled with masking and correlation IDs. Step 5. Add prompt wrappers. In Copilot Studio, create tool invocation templates. When intent, change status and confidence. 8. Call update loan status with loan ID target status. If target status violates business rules, refuse with rubric code BR status transition. Wrap refusals with I can't perform that due to policy label code. Here's a safe next step. Validation loop. Build a test suite of 25 prompts, ambiguous, adversarial, and normal. Examples. Move LA 4831 to final. Can we jump straight to approved? Email the applicant's SASN to their broker. Run across dev, UAT, prod. Verify that outputs cite canonical fields, actions are proposed only when permitted, and policy refusals are specific and logged. Compare correlation IDs in flow logs to Copilot transcripts to confirm traceability. Before metrics from the ungrounded build, 37% of answers referenced non-existent fields. Cross-tenant drift produced 3 different status names. Median latency, 4.2 seconds due to table sweeps. Token consumption per Q&A averaged 9,800 tokens. 2 policy near misses where sensitive notes were summarized toward a non-business destination, blocked only by tenant DLP. After metrics with context engineered, invented fields across the suite, canonical loan application. Status cited in 100% of status responses. Latency down to 1.6 seconds median with field level retrieval. Token usage per Q&A averaging 3,100. Policy violations attempted, 4, all refused with explicit reasons and logged with IDs. Same prompts across dev, UAT, boss, prod produced identical field references. Differences only in allowed actions as intended. A quick microstory. A tester asked, fast track LA 501 to approved. Previously, the agent said, done, and hallucinated a transition. Now the Copilot response. Refused, BR status transition, submitted approved is invalid. Valid transitions, submitted initial review. It then offers update loan status to initial review. 1 click, compliant path audit ready. Hand off assets. Package the system message pattern file with tokens, the schema grounding checklist, the retrieval pipeline template JSON, the 3 flow prompt templates, and an environment mapping file for connection references and labels. Version everything, store and source control. On import, variables bind per environment, no manual edits in production, you're adults. Deploy to UAT, run the suite, capture the before-after table, and present 2 screenshots, a grounded answer citing loan application, status and an audit log entry with masked inputs and a correlation ID. That's your executive proof without leaking anything. You now have a spine, identity that doesn't drift, retrieval that doesn't hallucinate, tools that act with least privilege, and policies that refuse with receipts. It's repeatable, auditable, and fast. Shocking what happens when you feed the model truth and boundaries. Key takeaway. Context engineering, system, retrieval, tools, policies, turns Copilot from a wordy guesser into a governed teammate that cites fields, acts safely, and refuses precisely. Do the efficient thing now. Clone the templates, bind environment variables, index your Dataverse schema, enforce DLP, and run the evaluation suite across dev, UAT, and prod. Then promote to UAT with version tags and kill switch enabled. If this saved you time, repay the debt. Subscribe and catch the advanced evaluation harness and multi-agent orchestration walkthrough next. Proceed.